Hi guys, I'm Nolan Lawson, and welcome to Let's Play Castlevania 3 Dracula's Curse. This game was released for the Famicom in Japan in 1989, for the American NES in 1990, and it wasn't released in Europe until 1992. Overall, it was released pretty late in the NES's life cycle, close to the debut of the Super Nintendo, which is maybe why a lot of fans seem to have passed it over. That's really unfortunate though, because as it turns out, this is a fantastic game, probably one of the 10 best in the NES's library. If there's one word I'd use to describe it, it's ambitious. The music is ambitious, the graphics are ambitious, the scale of the game is just ambitious. Especially for NES days. Even the story takes a turn for the epic. The game is set in 15th century Europe, 100 years before the events of Castlevanias 1 and 2, and we play the role of Trevor Belmont, an ancestor of Simon Belmont from the first two games. In Japanese, this game is called Akumajo Densetsu, which means the Legend of the Devil Castle. Akuma is devil, Jo is castle, and Densetsu is legend. Normally all Japanese Castlevania games are called Akumajo Dracula, which means Devil Castle Dracula, but this one is unusual in that it cuts Dracula from the name. Not sure why, since Dracula is still the main villain. Maybe they just thought Legend of Devil Castle Dracula would have been too much of a mouthful. Good call, Konami. The main character is actually called Ralph Belmondo in the Japanese version. Belmondo is beautiful world in Italian, but for Western audiences they changed the family name to Belmont, which is beautiful mountain in French. I'm not really sure what the point was, but there you go. Ralph, on the other hand, I can totally understand why they changed that to Trevor in the American version. I mean, it's just not a very badass sounding name. Behold the mighty hero of legend, Ralph. See, it just doesn't work. So anyway, let's play this game. So this right here is the name entry screen. It doesn't really matter what I put in here. The point of this is just so that you can't share your passwords with your friends, I guess. So here's Trevor, making a little prayer to the road that leads. And then off we go. So this first level, you guys should be able to tackle it pretty easily on your own. I'm not going to talk about it too much. Instead, I'm going to talk about the basics of the game. First off, the controls. They're exactly the same as in Castlevanias 1 and 2. There's no acceleration, so Trevor here has two speeds, walking and not walking. And then when you jump, you can't control your midair velocity like in most platformers you may be used to. So he has three kinds of jumps: right jump, left jump, and straight up jump. Nothing else. So that's kind of a big deal. That means you need to plan out your jumps and your attacks accordingly, because you can't change your mind in midair. Now this church is just gorgeous. I just want you to take a look at this real quick. What Konami did here. All the little details in the background. It's just fantastic. The whole jumping thing I find kind of interesting because, you know, in the real world you can't control your jumps after your feet have left the ground. It's just not physically possible. But in most platformers, at least ever since Mario, the convention has been that you can change your midair jump velocity. But you can't in Castlevania, so get used to that. Another important thing is the whip. Whenever you whip, you stop dead in your tracks, because you can't walk and whip at the same time. On the other hand, you can jump and whip, and that doesn't slow you down at all. So that's why you see me jumping and whipping a lot. It's also important to know that your whip has a delay. So, once again, you have to plan out your attacks very, very carefully. More carefully than you would in other platformers, because of that delay. Here, I'm trying not to fall through the floor, that's why I'm walking left and right instead of jumping. Those Medusa heads are also interesting, because they're different from the Medusa heads in Castlevania 1. In Castlevania 1, you could just walk straight forward, and the timing was such that the Medusa heads would just go right around you. In this one, if you try to do that, you walk right into the Medusa heads. So instead, you have to walk left and right a little bit in order to avoid them. You also pick up these sub-weapons throughout the game. Notice I've got an axe in the top of the screen there. There are 5 sub-weapons. There's the axe, the cross or boomerang, the holy water, the timepiece, and the knife. I'd say the axe, the boomerang, and the holy water are really the only decent items in this game. If you get the knife or the timepiece, try to replace it as fast as you can, because they're basically worthless. Another thing you might notice is that I'm not hacking away at all the candles. These candles contain power-ups like hearts, which power your sub-weapon, and also other assorted goodies like new weapons. But really, I feel like the candles are kind of a big obstacle in this game, in that they can distract you a lot. Like, sometimes you'll be at a difficult part in the game, and you'll be trying to harvest candles so you can get the power-ups, and Well, then you get careless, and that's when you get hit by a bat and fall to the floor and have to do the level all over again. So, it's really not worth it. It makes more sense to just harvest the candles judiciously. This boss is really a piece of cake. Like many of the bosses in the game, you can pretty much just wail on him and eventually he'll relent. So that's it for part 1. Next time we'll get to see Grant in the Clock Tower of Untimely Death. See you then!